Why do we have to?
G'day guys, hope you're doing well and welcome to the Hobby Hatch. Recently I was in my local hobby store and I came across this Luna Diver Stingray kit. Now the sculpt is really cool, but the base it comes with is kind of meh. So I thought I'd make a display base for it. So I took inspiration for this base from a volcanic zone in Ethiopia, which has these acid lakes and sulfur deposits all throughout it. I thought it'd make a perfect backdrop for this really cool model. So this model kit was pretty easy to put together. Just clipped him out and used some Tamiya extra thin to melt it all together. Overall process was pretty fun. So this kit came with two pilot choices, one helmeted pilot, the other unhelmeted, and I of course chose the helmeted pilot. Not that it mattered, so I glued everything together, put him in place and sealed him in, never to be seen again. And with him in his chair, I moved on to all the last little details of the model. I think some backwards facing guns, boosters, and all those little cool handrails that are easily snapped off while you're handling and trying to paint it. Also in the kit came these really cool mech suits. So I put them together and thought I'd include them in the diorama base as well. With him done, I moved on to building the terrain. So to build the terrain base, I used a piece of shelf that I cut down and some XPS foam. Just glued that together with some PVA wood glue. Next, I used the model itself to mark out certain areas of the base where I wanted some rocky outcrops to go. I then cut down the remaining foam that I had and glued all those together, ready to be formed by the hot wire cutter. So I was left with one big stack of foam and two little stacks of foam. I then got to work cutting those down and trying to form them into interesting shapes. Next, for the sulfur lake in the middle, I used a piece of cardboard to trace out its general shape. And then I used a knife and pliers to chop it out of the middle. then realised that that hole was far too deep, so I brought up its depth with cardboard and glued it in with hot glue. I also wanted 2 layers to this sulfur lake, so I did a similar, glued in some cardboard, formed up the sides with hot glue, and then carved it out. So the sulfur pools in the pictures are multi-layered, but they also have these little pools kind of inside them. So I drew out where I wanted those pools to go and built up the sides of those pools with more hot glue. It gets better, trust me. I then glued in those foam rock outcrops as well as a little bit of cork that I tore up to break up the flatness of the terrain. Oh, also, I decided I'd use the other pilot that came in the kit. So a little bit of modification to him. I glued him down as well. To add some texture to the base, I made a mixture of plaster, Mod Podge, and paint, which I mixed up. I took a bit of a pasty consistency, then I slopped that all over the base. Quickly realised that the paste was far too thick, so to smooth it out I just used a damp brush and I dabbed it all over the model. Then for the sides of the acid lake I used plastic gap filler, and I just smeared that all over it. I also used the same technique of a damp brush to smooth that out and form the sides. After that, I had a chance to dry. I primed everything black, and using some PVA glue, I covered the entirety of the diorama in grout to add a little bit of that dusty sand texture. With that down, I sealed everything in with isopropyl alcohol and watered down PVA glue. So for painting the base, I used a mixture of reds and browns through the airbrush. Tried to get a fairly uneven mottled effect throughout the entire thing. Then for all the parts that were going to get a coat of yellow-orange, I base coated those areas with ivory, just so it'd show up a bit better. Then moved in with the orange and tried to fan out those colours into the surrounding browns and reds. Also sprayed some of the orange in around the rocky outcrops to give the illusion that the sulfur was building up there too. I then built up from orange to yellow around the rim and some of the inside portions of the pool, and then knocked back a lot of that vibrancy with ice yellow to get a bit closer to the sulfury look. Lastly, with the airbrush, I built up and fanned out the orange a bit better into the surrounding using just a straight orange, slowly mixing in more and more of a dark reddy colour until finally ending on red. I then went in with a large makeup brush and using the Baylor brown gave the entire surface a dry brush to bring out all those little details from the grout. Then to finish off the dry brushing, I used more gas bone, just hit all the edges of each of the rocky outcrops to bring out all that sharp detail. I then used Baroth Blue to kind of base coat underneath where I was going to pour the resin. Isn't really going to show up much, it's just in case the resin was transparent enough to show through. I didn't want any of the oranges or whites to come through the resin, be visible from the top. Then use the same colour and mix it into some clear resin, making it opaque. And then I poured that in as well. With that done, I popped all the bubbles that were coming to the surface with a butane torch. I then left that to set and moved on to painting the model. So on to painting the model. I wanted to go in with something fairly simple. So using a nice green war boss green in this case, I stippled the entire surface using a range of different size makeup brushes. I ended up using the smaller makeup brush a lot more, just because it gave me a lot nicer of a modelled texture. And I did, I think, about 3 or 4 layers of this. Then once I'd built up a nice base coat with that green, I went in with pale yellow and I hit just all the spots where I thought the model would be brightest, where the highlights would be. And once again, I did about 2 to 3 layers for that one. Focused most of the yellow layers towards the top of the model. I think I only passed about 1 layer towards the bottom, so it blends in with the green a bit better. Then for the underside of the model, I stippled on a nice grey to maintain the mottled effect throughout. With that done, I hit all of the details and all the little pipes in those backward facing guns with a nice dark metal colour. In this case, it was Scale 75's black metal, and then gave everything a nice wash with Nuln Oil to kind of dull it back down. Lastly, for the painting, I painted in some lenses onto the front of the model, and to finish it all off, I added some decals. If anyone was wondering, these decals came with the kit. I also painted the mech suit that came with the kit. Exactly the same style and process, aside from the reds, which were just messily splotched on with brighter reds and oranges towards the top. So everyone needs a friend, so I decided I would build and paint up the other mech suit that came with the kit as well. The last step was to mount everything to the base, which I did for the Luna Diver with acrylic rods. Funnily enough, 1 wasn't enough to hold it up at the front, so I ended up jamming 2 in there. And I mounted the mech suits with just a little dab of gel super glue on each of their feet. In the end, I wasn't happy with how bare the top of the plateau looked, so I added some grass tufts. painted the sides of the base, and it was good to go.
It is going to explode. You had better run if you value your life.
Thanks for the information, but I'd like to stay here with you and die.
What?
Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. Or if you have any thoughts, leave them down in the comment section below. Otherwise, I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one.